As an island nation, we are shaped by the sea. Our ports are the bedrock upon which our history is built. Ports brought the world to our shores and brought our goods to the world, propelled industry and innovation, sustained communities up and down the land. And now, faced with a climate change crisis that demands immediate action, a new economic reality that presents opportunities and challenges, it's ports like this one that define our response and help lay the foundations of a new chapter in our history. I'm Tessa Dunlop, and this is Gateways to Growth. It's hard to overstate just how critical ports are to our economy. They always have been. This is the Port of Southampton. It alone supports more than 45,000 jobs, handles about £40 billion worth of exports each year, and annually contributes around £2.5 billion to the national economy. Perhaps less well known, though, is the role ports play in delivering on the UK's pledge to be net zero by 2050.
Making great waves in the drive for net zero is Portsmouth International Port, with sustainability at the heart of everything it does. How do you feel about having one of the most environmentally friendly ports in the UK?
Well, I'm very proud of it. I've been working here since 1994. We started on the environmental route in 1998. And it's been a slow but steady move towards decarbonising the port.
The port's involvement with EU-funded low-carbon technology has led to innovations such as seawater harvesting to heat its terminal and other facilities. Other initiatives include wind captures for natural air conditioning in the terminal, as well as LED lighting. A lithium and lead battery provides fast charge for a fleet of electric vehicles.
We've converted our port vehicles to zero emissions electricity, and that battery takes the electricity from our solar panels. It's actually AI and machine learning controlled.
Even this new link span had to meet the port's green objectives.
This link span is our newest addition in terms of capital investment, and we invested around 12 million. But whilst we looked at that investment, we looked at how we could reduce the electricity consumption, and this by far is the most efficient link span that we have within the port.
We hear a lot at the moment about the climate and the ecological emergency. What role do ports play in that?
Well, ports are at the forefront of challenging and overcoming this emergency. They are providing port users with electric charging points for ships, for vehicles, etc. But they're also facilitating the growth and rollout of our offshore renewable energy industry, so wind turbines in the marine environment.
Certain, often smaller ports are really working hard to hit that net zero target. Do we not need to hear more about their efforts, to celebrate it more?
They're vital to their regions in terms of an economic and employment hub. But also what they're doing is essential to the country to help us meet our net zero targets. So whether it be large ports facilitating the assembly and mobilisation of those offshore renewable wind farms, or the smaller ports who actually help to service those farms on a 25-30 year basis.
Milford Haven Waterway is already home to the UK's largest cluster of energy companies, employing over 5,000 people and handling a fifth of our current energy needs. Now the port plans to invest £50 million over the next 5 years to place it at the forefront of the UK's transition to green energy, and in doing so, create more jobs for this region.
It's not only a challenge for the Port of Milford Haven, it's a challenge for Wales and it's a challenge for the UK. So what we need now is acceleration in both the collaboration, the investment and the innovation around the Port of Milford Haven.
What we see in front of us is a great example of the energy of today sitting alongside the energy of tomorrow.
If we want to capture that benefit of the net zero opportunity to build the haven's prosperity, we need to be developing the facilities around our deep water here to make sure that actually we can take advantage of the Celtic Sea opportunity, floating offshore wind, and importantly, give the UK supply chain the opportunity to capture as much as possible of the £682 million that we could extract from that net zero transition.
Jess Hooper shares that ambition. As a programme manager for Marine Energy Wales, she's working with the port and other partners to support the development and testing of renewables technology.
We have in the UK an estimated resource of 15 gigawatts from tidal, 23 gigawatts from wave, and over 50 gigawatts in the Celtic Sea alone. So the opportunity is enormous for the region generally, for Pembrokeshire, but specifically for the port and the businesses that are collaborating with the port in some of the projects that we're progressing at the moment.
We're very lucky here in Orkney that we've been able to produce green hydrogen, and so the use of hydrogen as an alternative fuel source is the obvious way to go in some respects once the technology can be proven.
At the other end of the island, Northlink Ferries operates passenger and freight vessels into both Kirkwall and Stromness. The company used to power its vessels while in port by running onboard diesel generators. Now, in a UK first and working closely with the Harbour Authority, those generators have been silenced and the ships instead run on clean, green electricity.
It demonstrates a commitment to the Scottish Government's reducing carbon targets. It's a plant Orkney's place in terms of renewables, and we've got a fantastic natural environment here, and it's really important that we protect that. And things like shore power will mean that we're protecting our environment and making our communities healthier well into the future.
Scapa Flow is a huge area. It could accommodate the entire city of Edinburgh with room to spare. Safeguarding this vast marine environment is a top priority for Orkney Harbours. The organisation is the only one of its kind in the country to have its own environmental team on staff, keeping a close eye on how the operation of the port might possibly affect the flow's marine ecosystem.
I think it's really important to have an in-house team. There's the data longevity, so you have a long-term data that the team understands, and they also understand why they're doing and what they're doing. And it's also really important to realise that we all work and live here. We really care about the environment.
Montrose is literally a gateway to the North Sea, and their long established experience in the offshore energy industry through oil and gas, as well as transportation and logistics, are just ideal experiences for this sector. The role of offshore energy is critically important for oil and gas players, supply chain, and established offshore wind developers.
Montrose provides a sheltered haven almost half a mile long. It's hoping to benefit from renewables, not only from offshore wind, but decommissioning as big oil slowly winds down. Since 2011, the port has invested over £22 million in major quayside developments. This is one of its proudest services. Montrose is Europe's largest site for anchor and chain.
Intimate owns the largest amount of mooring chain worldwide, and from the base here in Montrose we supply throughout Europe to all industries, from oil and gas through renewables and the construction industry. Port and its teams are very flexible with us here. The foundation that we've built is allowing us to move forward with our clients to build a renewables business based here.
Like the rest of the port, Steve's anchor and chain activities are happy to transition to renewables. It is, after all, the port's future. This is a harbour with a long history, and one that is about to continue with a cleaner, robust and optimistic future. Montrose Port Authority has been chosen as the operations and maintenance base for the Seagreen offshore wind farm, one of the biggest developments of its kind in Scottish waters.
If you look at the longevity of the contract, it's 25 years. You know, we'll get regular port visits from the SOV, the service operations vessel, coming in every 2 weeks. So it's been fantastic.
How important are ports to the UK's decarbonisation plans?
Well, they play a really key role. I think, you know, they have the potential to play this really key role in terms of the green industry clusters that we need to be developing, because they have this fantastic shipping, transport, energy kind of all comes together in ports. And of course, if you're making hydrogen offshore, perhaps from offshore wind farms, you know, bringing that hydrogen onshore, turning it into ammonia, but also providing it as hydrogen potentially into the heavy goods sector, I really do think they can be the hubs of industrial clusters, some of the industries that, like steelmaking and others that might be using hydrogen, ammonia production, chemical production, really important hubs for those industries. And of course, really important in regenerating many of the UK's coastal communities who've had a pretty hard time. And when you think, that we could be looking at 100 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050, that's an awful lot of port capacity needed for moving those very big blades and those very big structures out to build those wind farms.
We're working with government closely on the whole decarbonisation programme. We're looking at alternative fuels. We're looking at opportunities for vessels to reduce any pollution that they might emit in ports by cold ironing. Basically, the vessel comes in, it can turn off all its engines and generators and plug into a local, greener, more renewable power supply. But the renewable fuels for vessels, not necessarily the ports, this is more the shipping industry, but ports can influence by adding the infrastructure to supply. It's looking at greener, non-carbon-based fuels for vessels.
Alternative fuels and propulsion systems are an important focus for the decarbonisation of shipping, but there's a lot that ports can do now to attract customers looking for greener operations.
Software innovations from ION help ports around the country maximise their efficiency and become greener. The port of Montrose on Scotland's east coast was on a mission to become the smartest port around and decided to replace its manual operations with Marlin Smartport's modular cloud-based solution that manages everything from port calls to back-office administration. The new technology took Montrose's control team just 24 hours to master. And it doesn't stop with digitisation. For Calmac Ferries, Marlin Smartport provides real-time insights in a range of areas, from berth availability to giving port staff access to geofence information to let them investigate problems quickly and accurately.
It's incredibly useful from various different angles. From a commercial point of view, it allows us to have an oversight of how the network is being used for our different ports and harbours, being used where we've got capacity, and how we can look to fill that from a growth perspective.
We've talked about the challenges of climate change, but what of the digital revolution? To what extent is that going to change the way people work at a port and change the way it looks, almost, it feels here?
Yeah, ports are currently huge employers and very important to their regions and the regional economies. They provide a range of different types of jobs, from those on the quayside through to finance administration and port management in offices, etc. And all those operations are likely to change dramatically as we embrace technology, and we could see changes to the way that ports are managed digitally.
So in other words, is it going to become more automated and hands-off almost?
Potentially some operations will definitely move from that, and that could be some benefits to things like safety and security there, where you have less people in critical roles being exposed to dangers and challenges.
About 95% of all goods entering and leaving the UK pass through one of our ports. Dover, our closest transport link with mainland Europe, is vital to the supply chains that crisscross the British Isles.
Come Brexit, come COVID, here at the port of Dover in Kent, on the shortest sea crossing to Europe, the trucks keep on coming. Embark, disembark, roll on, roll off. The UK's busiest ferry port is a picture of resilient efficiency. The Port of Dover is a proficient logistics hub positioned to support the UK economy well into the future.
We operate 24 hours every day, 364 days a year. The port is always open and the throughput is always happening.
The Port of Dover says it's unrivalled for capacity, efficiency and frequency, handling 120 ferries a day, £122 billion worth of trade every year, 90,000 passengers a day and 10,000 lorries a day.
We get high productivity out of the ferries, high frequency, high capacity, so that resilience in the supply chain, knowing that things can constantly move, is what is very attractive to our customers.
In the shadow of the white cliffs of Dover, the job of getting goods from A to B goes on. Road haulage is essential at some point in almost every freight journey, and the focus here is on making the system the best it can be for the UK's long-term benefit.
It's a vital trading hub.
And as you can see behind me, we've got lorries going day in, day out. Up to 10,000 lorries a day are using this port, and that's just a testament to how important it is to supply chains.
The task that we have is to decouple from fossil and to move to renewable electricity sourced energy, which then needs to be at every point, both in the raw production of a commodity and the transport of that commodity and its storage. And all of those steps require energy. The truck that carries the materials into the plant will all need to be moved away from fossil fuels, and electricity is the scalable way to do that. There might be interim steps taken with biomass-derived energy commodities, but those we know cannot achieve the volumes and scales that we need for the scale of energy use we have across global sectors today.
And how can they drive the decarbonisation agenda?
So when ships are alongside in ports, they've got the opportunity to connect to electricity directly from the port and use something called cold ironing, and that will require some modification to the infrastructure that we have in the ports, as well as some change to the systems that are on board vessels. And many vessels are using that today because it's a relatively practical and easy step to take.
So technology is seen as the answer. What exciting technologies are out there?
So the fuel that we will need to use is a hydrogen-derived fuel, and that's produced using electrolyser, just splitting water into its hydrogen atoms, and then combining that perhaps with nitrogen to make ammonia, which is then a much easier version of hydrogen to store on board the ship and to store on land and to handle on board the vessel.
Owned and operated by PD Ports, Teesport is driven day and night 365 days a year by a vision of what ports could be in the future and their role driving growth and sustainability in the green economy. The UK's Northern Gateway for international trade handles some 26 vessel calls a week and has driven opportunity and prosperity here for generations.
We want to be one of Britain's largest ports by the end of this decade, but by doing so, we always also want to be the most sustainable. And when I mean most sustainable, that's to get to net zero. And to be very specific, we want to get to net zero by 2027. First and foremost, get real agents for change in, and that's getting young people into your business. Give them the tools, give them the skills, educate them. Ultimately, they will tell you what they think you need to do in order to move this business forward. It's work.
Nearly a quarter of the 1,000 staff employed by PD Ports at Teesport are under 30 years old. The company seeks to attract, develop and retain talent through its industry-leading apprenticeship programme and in partnerships with charities like the High Tide Foundation, universities and other educational establishments. People like apprentice civil engineer Emily Clark.
I did a 4-week internship with PD Ports, in which I worked in each of the different departments. I found out that civil engineering was the one that I enjoyed most. So when I was offered a job here as an apprentice civil engineer, I was happy to take it and jumped at the chance.
Workington was at the heart of steel production in the northeast of England for a century. All the railway tracks it forged and exported via its port were said to be holding the world together. Appropriate then today that its railway links and its port are at the heart of plans to rejuvenate the local economy.
To arrive at the port of Workington is to sail on tides used by seafarers for centuries. But make no mistake, this regional port is firmly fixed on the future. Adapting to demands, creating far-reaching strategies and embracing the heavy lifting when it comes to carving out a more sustainable future in the ever-evolving green economy. Using rail as a greener alternative to road haulage is key to the UK hitting its carbon emissions targets. And the port's dockside facilities already include a first-rate rail freight network to reduce the number of vehicles on the road, cutting landside carbon emissions.
First and foremost, we can move probably 5 times as much by rail as we can by road in one go. We're environmentally friendly, we use the most powerful locomotives in the country, and effectively it takes all those trucks off the road that you get stuck behind in Cumbria. Oh, it's a fantastic piece of logistics.
Sutton Harbour is the original port of Plymouth in Devon. 400 odd years ago, the Mayflower set sail. On board, the Pilgrim Fathers, heading for the new world. Today, fresh opportunity has come to this once bustling fishing port.
Plymouth has recently been awarded £9 million to become the country's first ever national marine park. This will attract more tourists to the city. Working closely with Plymouth City Council, Sutton Harbour Group also plans to rejuvenate an industry with ancient ties to the harbour by the redevelopment of Fish Quay.
We came, we studied it, and we saw the opportunity to really create something wonderful. We want to strengthen the fishing industry. We're the third largest wholesale fish market in the country. There's a real opportunity to create not just a more efficient and productive wholesale market, but to create a retail market. This is something that can be built on, and the retail market will then not only serve people in Plymouth, it's going to bring more tourism revenue, it's going to bring more employment. So this is not just a matter of beautification and of integration of ideas, it is driving a local economy.
In increasingly complex and uncertain times, port resilience is essential to business continuity, local communities, and the economy. The resilient shift highlights the opportunity for ports to help decarbonise. They can do this through the transformation of energy systems, supply chains, and global shipping, at the same time as helping our society build resilience to future uncertainties.
Resilience for Ports was set up in September 2020 to support port systems and global supply chains to withstand multiple drivers of disruption. A collaboration of public and private stakeholders have come together to define social, environmental and economic outcomes of ports in the face of decarbonisation, automation, technology, climate change and global trade patterns, to help build critical infrastructure systems that can withstand challenging times and transform ports into carbon-neutral smart hubs that are resilient to future uncertainties.
Ports are really a nexus that fully integrates with the energy system, so there's almost no division between what ports do and what energy does. Ports within themselves, of course, use energy and need to be able to respond to what the energy system is doing, both economically and in terms of its carbon trajectory.
The resilience shift is focused on helping ports to consider resilience options as positive actions and not as hasty reactions.
We tend to worry about the last bad thing that happened, so there'll be a lot of measures in place for pandemics, but probably the next bad thing that happens won't be a pandemic. So we're trying to build the framework that says, think about the bigger picture, think about everything that's changing and make your resilience enhancements in that context.
Any small, medium-sized port now presents a tremendous opportunity for developing seaborne trade and then bringing those goods in local to communities.
The IMO suggests that global freight demand is likely to rise by at least 300% by 2050, while at the same time climate change could mean more extreme weather events happening more frequently. So for gateways to grow, they need to start thinking about future risks now and what port infrastructure will look like long term.
I think the two big ones are technology and sustainability, and both of those present risks, which from our point of view is, the business that we're in, trying to be alongside those port groups as they cope with that changing risk profile.
TT Club underwriters work closely with ports and their intermediaries to understand how they work now, how that work is likely to change, and what risks those changes are likely to bring. And because it's a not-for-profit mutual insurer, it has a vested interest in helping ports understand and manage those risks.
It's all about human error. There is the climate change risks, but the human error risks take up 70% of what we see for claims at the TT Club. So I think embedding a safety-led culture is a vital step towards eliminating harm and providing a safe place to work.
The Port of Tilbury is well placed to handle cargo for London and the South East, with 16 million tonnes coming through each year. And what comes by water can easily link up to road and rail, and that's important because in logistics, connections are key. An integrated approach between the different modes helps ensure not just a reliable and robust network, but also helps reduce the environmental impact of supply chains.
Reducing our environmental impact in freight and logistics transport is through an integrated approach between the different modes, so rail, water, road, and working together to create an integrated solution. So collaborating together is really important. And of course, technology will play a major role in delivering our aspirations. But for me, I think that collaboration element is really essential to truly being able to create sustainable supply chains.
For centuries, trust ports have had to balance the commercial with the social, running ports and harbours as businesses whilst protecting the needs of the local community and the environment. For Harwich Harbour Authority, that means not only supporting its port operators, but also being the innovative guardian of the 150 square miles it's responsible for.
The local stakeholders are the shareholders in the business. So where a private company might pay a dividend to a shareholder, Trust Ports paid that stakeholder dividend.
As a successful trust port, Harwich Haven Authority can be seen as a potential blueprint for a greener, kinder future, where generating wealth and protecting the environment and communities can actually go hand in hand. Despite the combined impacts of the COVID pandemic and Brexit, the authority generated a surplus after tax of £5.8 million in 2020, and a percentage of that surplus is used for dozens of local environmental and community-focused projects.
What Harwich Haven Authority is very good at is responding to the needs of their local community, whatever they might be. Things like the Swim Safe project, which is helping young people to be aware of the dangers of open water, to beach schools, to clearing up plastic on the local coastline, right through to supporting more gritty issues like supporting families who are affected by domestic violence or rape, or young people who need particular support at a difficult time in their lives.
Environmental protection is also high on the agenda. A major study is already underway to assess the health of seagrass in the Harwich Haven estuary area and what can be done to improve the situation further.
Seagrass is a really good carbon sink, so it stores all this carbon from the atmosphere and also provides excellent habitat too, and it can be a lot more effective at storing carbon than rainforest. So it's almost unimaginable to think that there's hardly any left. So we're obviously quite worried about that, and then we're looking to work with Harwich Haven Authority, Natural England, Essex University to try and build in restoration schemes to think, well, how can we bring some of these seagrasses back?
The importance of ports to the UK way of life and our economy isn't always recognised by the wider community. Our ports have been quiet achievers, and their contribution is set to become even greater as world shipping trade grows. That's why, as part of its online presence, the British Ports Association has made this short video, celebrating the value that ports bring to everyone.
From the moment people ventured out to sea, there's been a British port for every kind of craft and every type of journey. For seafarers, adventurers, weekend sailors and ferry passengers. And for ships taking our UK goods to the world and bringing the world to us. Without our cargo ports, 95% of the things inside our homes, 50% of our food, and our gas and electricity might cost more. And because ships are more efficient than planes or trucks, without them, the environmental cost of what we buy would be higher too. Ports support our fishing fleets and the offshore energy industry. They load and unload bulk goods like wheat and oil, containers carrying vehicles and machinery, and cargo from ferries, so that our purchases arrive on time. Ports can connect with road, rail, ferry rides, or a cruise to far away. Our ports support millions of jobs, adding billions of pounds to our economy. Owned by local councils, private companies, or independent trusts, they help ensure that ships berth safely, helping protect employees, seafarers, visitors, the community, and the environment. Ports benefit us all without the benefit of our taxes and have their sights set on sustainability, clean air, clean water, and protecting marine habitat. They're also important bases for renewable energy systems. Ports and harbours will always be interesting places for events, attractions, water sports, or just a wander and an ice cream. There are hundreds around our coast, shaped as much by local people and industry as they are by geography. Our ports, gateways to our history, our world, and our future.